Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to review 1969. This is my next Winona Ryder film. I believe that I can't remember which one was next in her film catalog. It might have been Heathers or Beetlejuice. I can't remember, but I've already reviewed both of those on this channel, and I am going to look it up right now. My computer's slow, though, because it's so old. This is kind of like the subplot in that one Office episode where, Andy has, the really old computer, and he's just totally frustrated. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, I decided that I would be reviewing 2 Winona Ryder films a month because she has so many movies compared to Sharon that I really felt like it was worth doing things that way. She's got 69 projects to review, basically. So, this film, though, I was like, what's this film going to be? Because I never heard of there's any movie called 1969. I've never seen anyone ever talk about this movie. Oh, the next movie was Beetlejuice. So, yeah, I've already reviewed that. And the next movie after this one is Heathers. And I've already reviewed that. So, this movie is actually about stuff. And I say that because, this is another one of those movies. Just like with that Winter in the Blood, and just like with Square Dance, where it's just a movie about a movie. Hardly anything happens in this movie. One critic, he called it an aimless drama. And I would agree with that, with that description. I mean, the movie itself, it's got Kiefer Sutherland, Robert Downey Jr., Bruce Dern, Winona Ryder in these main roles, and somehow it isn't a masterpiece. And I think that really needs to be examined because, it just shows that, you could have the greatest cast in movie history and you can still have a movie that's it's just okay. And that's where I think this movie falls. This movie, it's just okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of in the middle. It had some good stuff in it. It had some bad stuff in it. And I say that because, with a lot of other movies, there's so much stuff to talk about. There's so much substance to go over. Let's just say Short Circuit 2, for example, actually had more substance to it. This movie, however, the summary was very false and misleading in that it said that the movie was all about these 2 best friends who wanted to dodge the draft and not have to go to Vietnam. Well, that's what, parts of the movie are about, but most of the movie is, just angst, just young guy angst. It's all about these guys that just graduated high school. They're kind of like hippie guys, but they're kind of not because they're not full-on crazy hardcore hippies, but they're still they're mid-tier hippies. They're the hippies that like to dip their feet in the hippie water, and then they're it's just it's nice, but I'm not gonna go skinny dipping in this hippie water and become a full-on hippie. I'm just gonna dip my toes in the water, and that's what these characters are. And Kiefer and Robert Downey Jr., they have really, really good chemistry with each other. They're really good at playing best friends. And then Winona Ryder, she plays Robert Downey Jr.'s sister. And she's actually really good in the movie. She has a couple of highlight scenes. In fact, right off the bat, the 2 scenes of the movie that I really think jump out to me are, number 1, the graduation speech, where Winona Ryder, she really roasts America because she says that, John F. Kennedy once said, like, ask not what you can do for yourself, but what you can do for your country, or something like that. And then she's like, who are you going to ask nowadays? President Nixon? It's like, that was really, like, savage of her, and I thought that was great. And then there's another part later on in the film where she and Kiefer are riding along, and they have to pass all these military vehicles with all these soldiers that are going to Vietnam for no reason. And when they're going by them, she's giving them all the peace sign. And, it's really kind of like a sad and creepy kind of image, because the majority of these soldiers are all giving her the peace sign back. And there's only like a couple who are flipping her off. And so you can just see right there this like really good like image of like, all these people, they probably didn't even care. They probably didn't even want to go there because, there wasn't any actual legitimate reason to be going there to do anything. And they were just all like innocent people who ended up getting killed for no reason because the old men decided that we need to have a war now so that we can do whatever, something that didn't matter. And those were my two favorite scenes. Other than that, this movie has not very much to talk about. There's this one part where it's also a very predictable movie, too, because Kiefer Sutherland's brother, he's going to Vietnam, and what's going to happen to him. He's going to get killed. And so they have all this drama with that, and, I think that's why this movie isn't very popular, is just because it's so predictable. It's so been there, done that. I mean, a lot of the movie, too, feels like Easy Rider. With these two guys, they're going on the road together. There's this one point where, they're enjoying the summer, and they're picking up hitchhikers, and there's another point of where they're hitchhiking, and, it's just very much like we're trying to be like Easy Rider in the 80s. And that's not really a good idea because it's the 80s. And that's another problem with this movie, is that it's an 80s movie. You can clearly tell that this is 1980s. This is not the 60s. And the reason is because, like, it's trying too hard to be the 60s. The soundtrack to this movie is really, really good, and that's because they play, like, almost every single song from the 60s ever. Like, all the famous songs that they played around this time period, they're all in this movie, and it's almost like Suicide Squad, where every other minute they're playing a new song. And you're like, oh, there's that one, oh yeah, I remember that one, oh yeah, there's that one, I remember that one. And, so they're trying so hard that it's, like, obvious that this movie is not in the 60s. And then at the end, they actually give up. Because at the end of the movie, they're playing this song, and it is straight out of the 1980s. It sounds so 80s, it's like, not even funny. And so by the end of the movie, they've just given up on trying to be the 60s, but... I think another thing to say is that I think that there's this observation that I've made about a lot of movies from different decades, and that is movies in the 80s and kind of early 90s, a lot of them had like a 1950s vibe to them. Like you think about Twin Peaks. That's not a, 80s movie. It's a 90s TV show, but it had a very 50s feel. And you think about even like Back to the Future. What's that movie all about? It's all about going back to the 50s. And I really think that, like, for every decade, they're always trying to catch up. And so you have all these movies that are kind of nostalgic for, like, the past decades before the one that they're actually in. And so, like, nowadays, there's a lot of movies that feel like they're in the early 2000s, or they feel like they're in 2010s mode. And then movies in the 50s, I think a lot of those movies too, they felt like they were in the 40s or 30s in terms of like, I've seen a lot of these movies from different time periods, and it really feels like for every decade, like they're trying to emulate other decades. Like, because I think about too, I have my own script, one of many scripts, and it's a vampire movie, and it takes place in the 2010s. And it is now the 2020s, and when I make that movie, it's going to feel like that time period, because that's when it was written, that's what it was written for, and I think that there's so many movies like this where, they feel like that, and the reason why I'm bringing that up is because a lot of 80s movies, they already felt like they were in the 60s or 50s or in the 70s. They didn't feel like the 80s. Movies in the 90s felt like the 80s. Movies in the early 2000s felt like the 90s. And so, God, there was a really good example I just wanted to mention. I just forgot it. Shit, I just forgot it. Shit. Well, shit. Oh, okay, I remember now. Here's another good example to prove my point. American Psycho. That's a movie where it takes place in the 80s. It looks like the 80s. It feels like the 80s. But when was that movie made? 2000. The year 2000. So that's what I'm saying, is that, like, this movie is trying so hard to be the 60s that it feels like the 80s. And that's a problem. I think that the story of these two friends, there's not very much of a story. The dad is actually one of the more interesting characters in the movie, and you hardly spend any of the time with the dad because he's kind of like, he's in an ignorant state where he thinks that the war is good, and he thinks that, no one's going to get killed over there, and, you just have to go do your duty and, go do whatever. And it's like, but his character, he had a lot of good acting moments, Bruce Dern, and he did a really good job with, like, the facial expressions that he made, and I was like, he really did a great job, even though he had hardly any dialogue in the whole movie. And actually, I was kind of thinking, like, I'd like to just see a whole movie about him. Like, I wish that we could have seen the whole movie through his perspective, because it would have been so much more interesting of, like, a character study instead of, like, this light drama where the majority of the scenes are all about these two guys talking about, how many girls have you hooked up with? Oh, I hooked up with 19 girls, and one of them was pretty bad. It's like, and, oh, that girl, she's going to come and talk to you now. Oh, that girl, she looks pretty hot. She's going to come and get with you. Oh, you want to go talk to that girl? We need to go talk to some girls. Like, that's this entire movie. It's Kiefer Sutherland. He's like, oh, look, I'm looking through my spyglass. And there's this part where he's, like, sitting in a college dorm room, and he's got this, like, spyglass that he's looking outside in the window. And I kind of like this scene because I felt like this is exactly what I would have done in this time period for sure. Like, just sit there with my little spyglass, peeking out at all the hot hippie protesting girls at this little college protest. And he's just like, oh, there's that one. There's a hot girl over there. There's a hot girl over there. Hey, Robert Downey Jr., come check this out. And Robert Downey Jr. is like, oh my God, there's a hot girl over there. Oh, wow, hot girls. Like, that's all these characters talk about. Like, they never really, like, there's one part where they kind of go on this weird kind of tangent about Leave It to Beaver. Like, it's really funny, kind of, because, like, they're, Kiefer Sutherland saying that, like, we're both leaves. We're both, like, leaves, and, Larry Haskell, he was like a piece of shit. And, there's Wally and Beaver, and they could be leaves too, or something like that. Like that was also a funny part of the movie. But like the majority of this movie is like these two guys, and they're like talking about girls in a way where it's just kind of like repetitive and lame. And the movie never really goes anywhere until this one part where the two guys decide all of a sudden, after they find out that the brother has died, or he's missing in action, which means that he's probably long gone. And who knows what even happened, because they didn't even specify, like, they didn't even say, like, oh, his body came back or anything. Like, I guess he was just forever disappeared, which is really, really scary. Like, I think one of the scariest things about that war in particular is just the amount of people that, like, went there and they never even came back, and, you know, their bodies are still, like, spread around in the jungle somewhere. Like, I think that's, like, the scariest part, because it's like, what happened to them? Like, where are they? Like, that's really, really scary. And these two guys decide to pull off a heist that is basically like something you would have seen in the White House Plumbers. So they have this little hippie van. It's painted all over. It's like the Scooby van. And they take it and they park it next to the government building where all the draft records are kept. Oh, I almost dropped my phone. And then the two guys go inside, and it's really, really, like, they're not being, like, calm. I mean, they're not being clever or sneaky at all. They're just being, like, totally, like, just, okay, we're going to go in there and commit the robbery now in broad daylight. And they have Winona Ryder, and she's doing, like, a watch where she's, like, walking along the road with her dog. And then when the police come, she pretends like she lost her dog, even though it's, like, right over there. It's like, what the hell? And then the guys go in there, and they're so stupid. Like, they think they're going to pull this off. They have this hippie van parked right out front where you could clearly see, like, they're committing a robbery. They break through the basement, and it's terrible the way they do it. It's so sloppy and so embarrassing. And it's just so obvious and contrived. Like, they're doing this and they're going to get caught, or one of them's going to get caught, and it's going to be all about getting them out of prison, or jail, I mean. And that's exactly what happens. They have a fight, and then Robert Downey Jr., he gets caught. Kiefer Sutherland doesn't. And then they have this really weird sequence, too, where Kiefer sleeps with Winona. Well, finally someone does in these fucking movies. Like, at this point, like, I couldn't believe that little shit Lucas, like, that whole movie. She's like, Lucas, let's go talk about Romeo and Juliet. You want to go to the movies? And Lucas is like, no, F you. I want to get with the girl from the Goonies who is irrelevant now. You know, like, I want to get with that shitty ass girl from the Goonies who uses people, and, well, not the actress, but, like, the character in that movie. And, you know, finally someone gives Winona Ryder the time of day, and it's Kiefer fucking Sutherland. And so, you know, Kiefer Sutherland, he's a great actor. He's probably one of my favorite actors. And he sleeps with her, and then he takes her on the road to go to Canada to escape. And this is the part where I was kind of confused, because I was kind of lost at, like, what was the point of this movie? Like, Vietnam bad. I've never seen that before in a movie. You know, like, what was the point of this? And then they get to the border, and Winona's like, I don't want to leave because it's in our hearts, or something like that. She says something really, really cryptic and strange, and it just doesn't make any sense at all. Like, I don't want to run away. And it's like, yeah, you're a girl. You don't have to worry about getting drafted to go die in a pointless war for the old men in the government. You know, like, you don't have to worry about that. So, you know, we know that you don't want to run away. But, like, Yeah, that was really queer and stupid. So they have this whole, like, emotional, like, a really, like, cringy 1980s emotional moment where Kiefer is about to cross the border, and then all of a sudden he does, like, a really radical U-turn, and they play this cringy music, and it's like, yay, we're just gonna sit around and wait for the old men to tell us to go die, yay! And, like, that's the arc of his character. And so then they go back home, so that all was kind of pointless. And so you see what I mean, like, how pointless this movie was? Like, it did a good job, I guess, because I did see a lot of comments on YouTube at people saying how authentic it was and how it reminded them of what it was like at that time. Because a lot of people, they didn't even know what was going on over there. Like, there was nothing because, they didn't want you to know. Because they didn't want you to know that they lied to you and that there was no actual reason to go over there, and it was just a whole bullshit thing that they did. And so then they have a funeral for the brother, and Kiefer makes a speech, and he's like, earlier in the movie, I was saying that this wasn't my war. Well, now it's different. Now it's personal. It's become personal. It is my war now. It's our war. And we're going to go get that guy out of prison. And so they all go there and get the guy out of prison just randomly. Like, they just walk up to the jail as a protest. And one of the people, since this is a small town, one of the people at the funeral is like one of the deputies there or something. And he goes there and gets Robert Downey Jr. out. And the ending of the movie is just everyone gathered in front of the jailhouse, and then Kiefer says that they went on to protest in Washington in November and whatever, and it's like, what was the point? Like, seriously, what was the point of this movie? It's trying to be Easy Rider. It's trying to be an anti-Vietnam War movie. Vietnam was over. This is 1988. Like, people, like, that's over. Like, that was long over by that point. So I just couldn't get over how pointless this movie was, regardless of how I enjoyed some of the performances and how I did enjoy some parts. Like, there was another part, too, that was kind of hard to watch, where Robert Downey Jr., him and Kiefer Sutherland are sitting at graduation up in the balcony, and then, or it's not like the balcony, I don't know what you call it, it's like the upper area, like, I don't know what to call it, because, like, they're having their graduation in, like, the gym or something, and Robert Downey Jr. takes LSD, and a couple of minutes later, after the graduation is over, he is actually naked, and he's running around the gym causing chaos, and he's just, like, running amok. He's swinging on a rope like Tarzan, and, that was very kind of hard to watch because of, knowing what he was like in real life with this whole drug issue. And it was almost like he was doing in the film what he was like in real life, and so that was kind of like, a lot of these older movies too, they have moments like that where, time passes, and you think about, like, some of these moments are either really prophetic, or they're really just like, they just don't age well because of, shit happens, like, yeah. So I apologize if this review was kind of all over the place too. It's just one of those movies. I can't do much about it. Like, it's not even based on a book too. Like, that's another thing. This is one of those movies that feels like it should be like a movie that you watch in school that's, like, based on a book. And, like, it's like, okay, it's history class. We got to watch the movie. It was based on this book that we read. That's what this movie feels like. But it's not. Like, somehow, like, I don't know why this movie was written. I don't know, like, because they acted like at the end, like this was based on a true story. But it was just too cliche to be based on a true story. Unless it told me. And I could not find whether or not it was based on a true story. And I really don't think it was. You know, I'm looking at the trivia right now. There's no mention so far. Yeah, there's no mention that this is like a true story, that like this was based on true events or anything. So that's something to mention as well, is that, like, you know, maybe this movie would have been a lot better and had performed a lot better if it was based on a true story where, you know, these people were real, people really died. Like, I'll give you guys an example of a really good true story Vietnam movie, which would be The Longest Beer Run Ever. Or was that what it was called, with Zac Efron? That movie was really, really good. It was based on a true story, all about this guy who just goes to Vietnam so that he can bring his friends some beer while they're fighting this pointless war that, you know, doesn't make any sense at all. And that movie was really, really good, especially compared to this movie, 1969. Like, so I would say that, like, the only way I could recommend this movie is if you're a really hardcore Robert Downey Jr. or Kiefer Sutherland fan. You know, if you're a big fan of either of those guys, you're going to really enjoy this movie and seeing them together, and because they do work really well together. But if you're just like a casual moviegoer, you know, probably just steer clear of this one as well. You know, not every movie can be a masterpiece, and most movies are not very good, unfortunately. So yeah, in terms of food, it's really tough. Because what is like the most pointless food that you can eat? Well, I know that this is going to kind of sound... well, actually, no, I have a different review. I was going to say lettuce, but I do know that lettuce can bring you some health benefits, I guess, even though lettuce is very questionable. You know, carrots, celery, broccoli, those are all much better than lettuce. So I'm thinking of, like, Kool-Aid, and I'm thinking about, like, you know, sugary drinks like High C and stuff like that. You know, they pretend like, you know, we're giving you all this vitamin C and we're giving you all these benefits. And really, they're just these sugary drinks that, you know, they don't even have very much real juice in these drinks. And they're just these little sugar drinks where, you know, if you drink a lot of that, you're just going to gain weight for no reason. Whereas, you know, you can get 0-calorie drinks that not only don't make you gain any weight, but they also give you a lot of health benefits. And I think that this movie is like drinking a large Minute Maid lemonade drink out of a bottle. Because although it can be pretty good, especially like if you're in the mood, if you're really thirsty, you can have a really good time drinking a Minute Maid lemonade. But then after you drink it, you sit back and you look at the packaging and you go like, wow, there's like 100 grams of sugar in this bitch. It's basically just as much sugar as a soda. And yet it's supposed to be like healthy and it's juice. And it's like, no, this is not healthy at all. This is crap. Now, this movie isn't crap, but it is kind of an empty movie. I mean, I know that a lot of people, this probably struck a chord with them because it just reminded them of what it was like for them, but I just don't think that it translated well as compared to what it could have done if it had a good story and if it had really, like, had stuff that actually happened in it, instead of just Robert Downey Jr. and Kiefer Sutherland traveling across the country going like,
"You have a girlfriend yet? You know, there could be a girl over there and she'll get with you. And, you know, there's a girl over there and she'll get with you. Oh, I have to get with girls. Oh, there's a girl over there we can get with. There's a girl over there. Oh, she's really pretty. Oh, no. Oh, my God, my God, my God."
You know, that's what this movie is. And in the background, it's like Vietnam, 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 Vietnam. So if you really like that, you're going to love this movie, I guess. But for me, I'm just kind of over it. I mean, there are some people who are still in denial, actually, which is pretty hilarious, because it's like, you know, that's like something where it should be like obvious now, like the JFK assassination. Obviously, that was a conspiracy. You know, obviously, we should never have gone to Vietnam. Anyone with half a brain knows that. But I'll tell you guys a really funny story to end this video. So in 10th grade, which I think that was like 6 years ago, or maybe, no, 5 or 4 years ago. No, it wasn't. It was, no, how many years ago was it? I can't remember. But in 10th grade, I had honors history class, and we were supposed to have come up with like a list of reasons why, of like mistakes that the United States has made in the past. And I put as the number one mistake was the Vietnam War. And you know, the teacher, he was a huge jackass. He's probably one of the worst teachers I ever had. You know, he was a real weirdo. He did this one pull in class where he always wore like this little golfer's cap or something. Like, it was really queer. And he came into class and he took this poll where he was like, "How many of you guys, when you get up in the morning, how many of you guys read the newspaper?" Like, he's asking these fucking teenage kids, like, "Do any of you guys read the newspaper? You get up in the morning," like, no one rose their hand. And he was like, "Oh, shit." And he's looking around like, "Holy shit. These kids, they don't read the newspaper." "How many of you guys listen to the radio, listen to the news? How many of you guys do that?" And like 1 or 2 people rose their hands, and he was like, "Ooh." And it was really, really hilarious, just like how out of touch he was. That, like, you think that like a teenage kid is gonna get up in the morning, like we had to get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. It was ridiculous. It was horrible. It was inhumane, for sure. We had to get up so early in the morning, we could barely make it to school. And we were supposed to pick up the newspaper and read it like an old man sitting at the breakfast table reading the newspaper while he eats his fucking Wheaties and shit and drinks his fucking, his stool softener shit or something like that. And, and he was like, "You guys, you need to read the newspaper because, you know, that..." And so anyways, I rose my hand and I told him the Vietnam War, and he had the same face that he had when, you know, everyone said that they didn't read the newspaper. He was so shocked and flabbergasted that anyone would say that the Vietnam War was a mistake. And so he was like, "What do you mean by that, Marco? What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, the whole thing was a waste of time." And he was like, "Well, actually, I don't think that anyone thinks that trying to stop the spread of communism is a waste of time." You know, that's what he said. And so I just thought, like, there are still people around in the modern day. And this isn't like an old man either. This guy was in like his 30s or early 40s. And there are people like him who think that the Vietnam War wasn't a waste of time? Really? I mean, it's fucking retarded. So, like, that is my one Vietnam War story. So it just shows that, like, even though this movie, it was made in the 80s, and it was trying to be anti-Vietnam, it's now the 2020s, and there's still people that think that the Vietnam War was necessary. So I guess, in a way, maybe this movie was a good idea, because there's still those idiots out there like Mr. C. I'm not going to say the full name, but idiots like Mr. C, who think that the Vietnam War was a good thing to do because we had to stop the spread of communism. I mean, what kind of bullshit is that? I mean, that is just complete and utter bullshit. But that's the kind of excuses that you make when you want, the young people to go and die for no reason, to stop the spread of communism. Like, like you could basically use that as an excuse to do anything. Like, with these certain types of people, like, you could be like, oh, well, I robbed the bank and I killed all those innocent people at the bank because I wanted to stop the spread of communism, and that there would be people who would believe that shit. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I went up and I blew up that one church, and because I wanted to stop the spread of communism, and there would be all these people like Mr. C going, hallelujah, you're stopping the spread of communism. And so, yeah, this movie, it was just okay. I'd probably never watch it again. There's much better Winona Ryder movies to watch. There's much better Vietnam movies to watch. Anyways, please like this video and comment and tell me what you thought of the movie. I would understand if people liked it because it got a good cast, and maybe it reminds people of that time period. It just reminded me of the 80s because it was very 80s. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest movie reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.